What is your best instant karma story? I was working with this bad girl at the sandwich shop where I work. She was 17. I was 18. I was telling a coworker about how my boyfriend had proposed to me, and she comes up behind me and says I bet he only proposed because the condom broke. It caused me to burst into tears because I'd also just recently found out that there was only a 2% chance that I could have kids, and I was still very sensitive about it. After coming out of the supply room, I went in there to cry. I asked her to come out the back door with me so I could have a word with her. I didn't want customers to hear us because we likely would have ended up yelling. Anyway, I told her to keep her nose in her own business and blah blah blah. She decided to slap me pretty hard too. I didn't hit her back because we were directly in front of a camera. So I went inside and called my boss. He had seen it on the live feed at home and had recorded it. He was already on his way. He came in and dragged her out the back and fired her. Last I heard, she was unemployed, pregnant, and stuck with some deadbeat butthole. My first job out of high school was working for a famous and nationwide guitar store chain. At first, I thought it would be fun, getting to be around guitars all day and talk music with fellow musicians. Turns out I was wrong. That 10-hour shifts 5 to 6 days a week, while listening to slightly too loud overhead music and 14-year-olds play the first 5 bars of Crazy Train over and over again wasn't actually all that great. But I stuck it out. I needed money and I have one of those don't quit ever attitudes. When I got hired, the store was in serious trouble. They had recently fired a huge chunk of the staff for skimming profits and selling pot out of the warehouse. Their numbers were really low and corporate was breathing down their necks. But, as it turns out, I have a penchant for selling stuff that I know about. I was the accessories guy and got really good at it. I was routinely rolling $30,000 or better a month out the door, and the most expensive thing I had in my department was only $500. I also had one of the lowest return rates on the West Coast, and a file with several letters from happy customers saying how much help I had been. Eventually, the store's numbers improved, especially my department. Eventually, we were #1 for our district and #3 on the West Coast, behind Hollywood and San Francisco. However, none of that mattered to the GM or anyone from corporate. All they wanted was more from me. My numbers had to be better every month, or I'd get yelled at. I was written up for having a low sales month 1 January because I went on vacation. I would get daily emails and phone calls from the district and regional managers demanding to know why I hadn't hit X dollar in sales yet. My hours got bumped up to the point where my days consisted of sleeping, showering, eating, and working. I had zero social life. My GF at the time would go weeks without seeing me. Eventually, because of the stress, I developed an ulcer. So I decided to quit. I threw myself into my last month, which just happened to be December, the month all retail workers hate. I worked extra hours, sold as much as I could, contacted old customers, you name it. Blew everyone out of the water, rolling just shy of $80,000 in gear. My boss called me into his office and said I was doing a good, not great good, job, and to keep it up. I pointed to the sales numbers screen, pointed out how well I had been doing, and how well liked I was by the customers, and asked for a raise. He laughed and said no. So I handed him my resignation letter. 2 weeks later I was done and starting classes in college, something I'd had to put off since work wouldn't allow me to cut hours for school. I came back to the store a couple of months later as someone who had worked with me called and said they'd found a jacket of mine in the warehouse. When I showed up, the GM wasn't there. I asked, and what I was told was that apparently, corporate had noticed me, and when my GM had failed to retain me, they'd fired him. Also, that department went from #1 to #9 in the district, out of 11 stores. The district managers were scrambling to recover, a few got demoted because of how things panned out, and the extreme higher-ups were not happy that the district was in such a state. I laughed the laugh of the vindicated. I've worked at the same company for over 6 years. I was a loyal, good employee with a perfect track record. Over the 6 years, I've only called in sick twice. I had the best results, the least amount of errors on paperwork in the whole region, and quite possibly the whole country. My new boss decided that that wasn't enough. He minimized my hours. They get a bonus to keep labor low, expanded my workload, and never had anything nice to say. He seemed to think ruling with an iron fist is the way to go about this. Even after all this, I'm the one who kept his head above water, fixing his errors along the way. So today I resign my position with immediate effect, which in terms cancelled his vacation plans for next week. On top of that, there is no one to fill my position. As soon as I mouthed the words I quit, you could see the terror in his eyes. He realized how messed he was without me and tried to do whatever he could to keep me for at least another week. I've never felt such a sense of instant karma as today. I never meant to cancel his vacation, but I wasn't going to put his needs before mine. I have bills to pay. I'd feel bad about it if he wasn't such a D, but he's a D. My stepdad is a driving instructor. I went to get my license pretty late, 22. One day he was giving me a lesson and we were going over one of the possible courses that the test takes. While we are driving down a street in the suburbs, a guy is tailgating the shit out of me. Really gangster looking guy. Looked pretty much exactly like scumbag Steve. Now that I think about it, sideways hat and all. Every time I come to a stop sign I do a full stop, obviously, and he throws his hands in the air and yells crap. It's starting to stress me out, but my stepdad says, don't worry about it, watch this. As we're going down the street he says, okay, now in about 50 feet I want you to start slowing down a little bit and, right when you are in front of that school zone, pull over to the right. So I do it. Right after I pull over, the guy who is angry at me now takes off like a bullet. And about 5 seconds later a cop steps out from behind a tree and waves him over for going probably double the speed limit in a school zone. We laughed hard. I worked at Martin in high school. It was a small store, so I worked everything. Electronics, stocking, cashier. You name it, I did it. I asked a woman and her son, about 12 or 13, if they needed help finding anything as I was out on the floor, and the kid immediately shouts at me for annoying him. I ignore it and go about my business. Right after that, I get called to checkouts. As I'm working there, here comes the pair. The kid has gone all out back in the electronics area with some EA Sports titles and a GTA game. I'm checking them out when the H prompt comes up for the M-rated game. I decide to take a chance. I flip the game over and inform the mother that this game has been rated M for the following reasons and read the list off the back of the case. There is an awkward silence. Then she angrily informs me that the son said it was only a little violent. The kid wasn't able to get anything that day. 2 regions of my company merged into one. The manager of the other region was a complete D. He was about 5'2" and walked around like he had something to prove. He treated all my employees like garbage and made them feel as though the reason they were choosing the other site over ours was because of the quality of work, when in reality they got tax breaks in the other state. Our numbers were far better in every category, but their labor was cheaper, and that is what mattered to the company. They gave my employees 4 months notice. At first, they all thought it was a good thing, so they could get paid while looking for another job. Nope. He made their lives miserable. He doubled their quota much higher than his region, cut commissions down by 40%, and made weekly visits chewing me and the other sales manager out for not hitting the new goals, and that there was no excuse. 1 month, the second to last month, we hit the new goal, not for him, to get our employees paid finally, and he then reamed us out because of the amount of vacation time used. Even after explaining employees needed days off because they were interviewing other places, since we are laying them off, and that I would not deny anyone time if they have it available. He tried getting me fired for this, but I had too many friends. Well, here is how the karma comes into play. I had worked closely with some corporate folks over the 2 years I was there. They found out my region was being shut down and thought I would make a great fit in their corporate office to be in charge of operations. Operations over the Midwest region. A-holes region. I kept it quiet. I didn't make any mention of it until I showed up at his office with a clipboard and a laptop. You should have seen the confusion in his eyes. Tim, are you visiting or something? Me, you could say that. Tim, well, I need to make sure security knows you're here. Me, oh, they know. I just had to show them my badge. I whip out my badge and show him my picture in front of the red, white, and blue flag. Only people that have a photo in front of a red, white, and blue flag are corporate employees. His butt was mine, and his face showed sheer terror behind his twitching lips. I was fair to his employees, but boy did I report every rude incident that went down there. His lack of cooperation, his condescending demeanor towards his employees. It only took a few weeks for him to pack up boxes. Apparently, employees had been complaining for a long time and it only took a little corporate push to get him out. Most satisfying moment in my working career, ever. This witch who bullies me because I'm a bit of an outcast in my high school said to me, "Today, the only reason why you are here is because your grandma was bad who gave birth to another bad mother. My grandmother died yesterday. The principal overheard her. The principal and I are good friends and knew about my grandmother's passing, and now she can't walk on graduation." I was flying cross country on a space available ticket and ended up having a layover in Chicago. I was walking around trying to find a restaurant close to my hotel and I passed this dude on the street begging for some money to buy something to eat. Now I'm used to seeing people with a cardboard sign or whatnot, but approaching people was pretty new to me. I thought to myself, man, this guy's probably just looking for drug or booze money and I'm going to call his bluff. So I walk up to him and say, "Tell you what, I won't give you any money, but I'm on my way to get a bite to eat, and if you want, you can come with me and I'll get you whatever you want." I was confident that he would turn me down with some excuse. Absolutely. I was not expecting this. So he picks up his stuff and starts walking with me, and we settle on some Ruby Tuesday or Applebee's-ish place. He says he can't decide between a big steak or ribs, and I wave him off with my hand and tell him I have no problem buying him both. As we eat, he pulls out the biggest knife I've ever seen in person. I'm talking like Crocodile Dundee crap. He puts it on the table and says to me, "I can't tell you how hungry I was. Everybody was passing me on the street. Some of them would glare or ignore me. Some would talk crap or toss in their 2 cents because I just wanted drugs or booze. I told myself the next person who had something clever to say to me was getting cut. I was frozen." The conversation eventually moved on, and we both finished our dinners, and I talked him into the desert. In the process, I told him I was extremely interested in his knife and was in the market for one, and I offered him $250 for his. He was ecstatic and sold it to me. I just figured that you didn't need a knife on him like that, and he could use the money. I gave it to a cop and said I found it on the street. Maybe some life was saved, who knows. My ex-wife messed around and got pregnant by some other guy. I took my son and moved out, and he moved in with her. I stepped back, did nothing vindictive at all, and just let the two of them wreck each other's lives. They were so thorough about it, I wound up feeling bad for them. It wasn't quite instant, but it was something that took care of itself. I never did anything to move it along. I tried to explain to my company how they were breaking the law with one of their procedures. They didn't listen, said somebody up the line would have caught it. Later, illegally fired me whilst I was on FMLA leave. Was, statistically at least, their best employee at my position out of 500 people. They got fined $250,000 for the violation I brought up several times. I'm still unemployed, but I go hiking all day and love my life. Have enough saved up to last me until I do find work. Freak them. My little sister's friend was being a real witch to me, following me around, mocking everything I said, making rude commentary on everything I did. I told her she shouldn't do things like that to someone older than her because it could have dire consequences. Anyhow, they conned me into playing hide and seek with them, and the rules were to stay in the house. I searched high and low for that little crap and couldn't find her anywhere. My sister had no clue either, and neither of us heard the doors open, so we didn't think she could be out there. Turns out the kid decided to say freak the rules and go outside. Well, she hid in the back of my mum's truck. It has a camper shell that can be locked from the outside. I guess someone saw it open and locked it while the kid was hiding inside. She ended up pissing her pants. I volunteered to unlock it, and I took my sweet time staring at her with this crap-eating grin. I worked for Goodwill quite a few years back as a supervisor because my mother and I had fond memories of treasure hunting there, and I wanted to try and build up some management experience with a reputable company. I thought it would be my dream gig for a while, even though I knew it would be hard work. Except it was anything but. The manager was an alright lady, but her assistant manager was a tyrant. Every day she would threaten to fire the employees if they didn't do their work right. I took offense to this because as a supervisor I wanted my team to be in good spirits and wanted them to love coming into work and doing good things for the mission. I wanted this to be a great place to work, but because every single day they were being told they could be fired, morale was rock bottom. People were afraid for their jobs every day. I had a meeting with the manager and I said I don't want to step on any toes. I know you run a successful store and I admire that. I would appreciate it if you could ask the assistant manager to tone down the firing threats because it makes my team nervous and I'd like to have a chance to improve productivity in my own way. She said she understood and I felt good about the conversation. The next day she called me into her office where she and the assistant manager were both waiting for me. They asked me to lock the door. As soon as I did I got the most hate-filled verbal lashing of my entire life. They started screaming at me, "You think you can turn us against each other? You are worthless. You just do your freaking job and don't tell us how to do ours. Who do you think you are?" This went on for about 20 minutes. I'm a grown man and I nearly started bawling right there. I told them to take this crappy job and shove it. I was the only supervisor they had on a team that required at least 2. The manager and assistant manager were already working 60-hour weeks to make things work on a skeleton crew, and when I quit they were going to be working 80 hours each with no weekends until they had at least a month to find someone else. They told me how much of a scumbag I was for not giving 2 weeks notice and ruining their month. I wasn't concerned about it. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit like, get subscribed, and tell us any instant karma story you know in the comment section, and support the original writers with upvotes. Links in the description box.